One lumberjack helped a cold orphan. Next day, 300 blankets covered his cabin in silence. Welcome to our channel, where we share the most incredible true stories that prove kindness always finds a way back to us. Before we dive into today's absolutely heartwarming tale from the American frontier, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss stories like this one. And please, drop a comment below telling us what country or city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these amazing stories travel around the world. Now grab a warm cup of coffee, settle in somewhere cozy, and prepare your heart for a story about how one simple act of kindness created a miracle that an entire community will never forget. Tanner Chapter 1, The Bitter Cold of December. The winter of 1889 was proving to be one of the harshest on record in the mountains of northern Idaho. Snow had been falling steadily for 3 weeks, piling up in drifts that reached the windows of the scattered cabins dotting the wilderness around Timber Creek. The temperature hadn't risen above freezing in over a month, and the wind carried a bite that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. Samuel Sam Carter pulled his worn coat tighter as he stepped out of his small log cabin into the pre-dawn darkness. At 45, Sam had been working as a lumber foreman in these mountains for nearly 20 years, and he'd never seen a winter quite this brutal. His weathered hands, scarred from decades of handling axes and saws, fumbled with the leather ties of his boots as the cold made his fingers stiff and clumsy. Sam lived alone in a modest cabin he'd built himself, about 5 miles from the main logging camp. He preferred the solitude after long days managing crews of rough loggers, and the isolation gave him peace to read his books and tend to his small workshop where he carved furniture in his spare time. His only regular companion was his faithful dog, Rex, a German Shepherd mix who'd wandered into camp as a puppy 3 years ago. This particular morning, Sam needed to check the equipment at the distant worksite before his crew arrived. A heavy snowfall the night before had likely buried some of their tools, and the last thing they needed was to waste precious daylight hours digging through snow when they should be cutting timber. As Sam hitched his horse, Thunder, to the supply sled, Rex began barking frantically from inside the cabin. The dog's agitated whining was unusual. Rex was typically calm and well-behaved. "What's got into you, boy?" Sam called, but Rex continued his urgent barking. Sam had learned to trust his dog's instincts over the years. Rex had once alerted him to a bear near their camp, and another time had sensed an approaching avalanche minutes before it struck. If the dog was this agitated, there was a reason. Leaving Thunder hitched, Sam grabbed his rifle and followed Rex as the dog bounded through the deep snow toward a cluster of pine trees about 100 yards from the cabin. The snow was knee-deep, making each step an effort, but Rex's insistent barking drew him forward. What Sam discovered beneath the largest pine tree made his heart clench with shock and pity. Huddled against the massive trunk, partially buried in snow, was a small figure wrapped in what appeared to be little more than rags. At first, Sam thought it might be a wounded animal, but as he brushed away the snow, he revealed the pale, bluish face of a child, a boy who couldn't have been more than 10 or 11 years old. The child was unconscious, his lips blue with cold, his small body shivering uncontrollably, even in his unconscious state. His clothes were pathetically inadequate for the weather: a thin cotton shirt, worn pants with holes in the knees, and shoes that were more holes than leather. Sam could see that the boy's feet were white with frostbite. "Dear God," Sam whispered, immediately scooping the child into his arms. The boy was frighteningly light, clearly malnourished, and his skin was ice-cold to the touch. Rex whined sympathetically as Sam carried the unconscious child back to the cabin, moving as quickly as the deep snow would allow. Every second counted. The boy was dangerously close to freezing to death. Once inside, Sam laid the child on his own bed near the large stone fireplace and immediately began building up the fire. He dealt with frostbite and hypothermia before among his logging crews, and he knew the treatment had to be gradual and careful. As he worked to warm the cabin and prepare warm water to slowly thaw the boy's frozen extremities, Sam wondered how a child had ended up alone in the wilderness during the worst blizzard in decades. The nearest town, Timber Creek, was 15 miles away through treacherous mountain terrain. No sensible adult would attempt such a journey in this weather, let alone allow a child to make it. The boy's clothes told a story of desperate poverty. Sam had seen enough hardship in logging camps and frontier towns to recognize the signs. This wasn't a child who had simply gotten lost during a family outing. This was a boy who had been living rough, probably for some time. As Sam carefully removed the boy's frozen shoes and began the delicate process of warming his frostbitten feet, the child stirred slightly, mumbling something incoherent. His eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing startling blue eyes filled with fear and confusion, before closing again. "It's okay, son," Sam said gently, continuing his ministrations. "You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you." Rex settled on the floor beside the bed, as if appointing himself the boy's guardian. The dog's warm presence and gentle breathing seemed to have a calming effect on the unconscious child. Sam worked through the morning, alternating between tending the fire, preparing warm broth, and carefully treating the boy's frostbite. He sent a message to the logging camp that he wouldn't be coming in that day due to an emergency, but he didn't elaborate on the details. As the day progressed and the cabin grew warm, the boy's condition slowly improved. His breathing became less labored, his shivering subsided, and some color returned to his pale cheeks. But Sam knew that saving the child from freezing was only the beginning. The boy was clearly malnourished and would need careful nursing back to health. More importantly, Sam found himself wondering about the child's story. How had he ended up alone in a blizzard? Where was his family? And what would happen to him once he recovered? As afternoon turned to evening, Sam prepared a simple meal of warm soup and bread, hoping the boy would wake soon and be able to take some nourishment. He had no idea that his simple act of compassion was about to set in motion a chain of events that would transform not just his own life, but the entire community of Timber Creek. Chapter 2. A Story of Survival. The boy woke slowly as the sun was setting, painting the cabin in warm golden hues from the crackling fireplace. His blue eyes opened cautiously, darting around the unfamiliar surroundings before settling on Sam, who was sitting in a nearby chair, whittling a piece of wood. Where am I?" the child whispered, his voice hoarse and weak. Sam set down his carving and moved closer to the bed, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. He'd noticed how the boy had flinched when he first woke, a reaction that spoke of bad experiences with adults. "You're in my cabin, son. You were half frozen under a tree near here. I'm Sam Carter. What's your name?" The boy struggled to sit up, wincing as he moved his still tender feet. I'm Billy Walsh." He looked around nervously. "I ain't stealing nothing, mister. I was just trying to get warm." "Easy there, Billy," Sam said gently, helping the boy settle back against the pillows. "Nobody's accusing you of stealing. You nearly froze to death out there. How long were you in the snow?" Billy's eyes filled with tears that he tried to blink away. "I don't rightly know. Maybe since yesterday morning. Time gets all mixed up when you're cold and scared." Sam felt his heart tighten at the matter-of-fact way the boy spoke about being cold and scared, as if these were normal states for him. "Where's your family, Billy? Your parents?" The boy's face crumpled slightly before he regained control. "Ain't got none. Ma died of the fever last spring. And Pa took off right after the funeral. Haven't seen him since." "Who's been taking care of you?" Billy shrugged with the resignation of a child who'd learned not to expect much from life. "Mostly myself. There was a lady in town, Mrs. Morrison, who let me sleep in her barn sometimes in exchange for chores, but her husband got laid off from the mill, and they couldn't spare the food anymore." Sam's jaw clenched as he began to understand the full scope of the boy's situation. "So you've been living on the streets?" "When I could. Sometimes I'd find work helping at the stables or carrying things for folks. But Billy gestured weakly at his small frame. "I ain't real strong. And there's lots of men needing work too. They get picked before kids do." The simple honesty in Billy's voice was heartbreaking. Here was a child who had been forced to become an adult far too soon, fending for himself in a harsh world with no safety net. "What were you doing out in the storm, Billy?" "That was dangerous, especially alone." Billy's cheeks reddened with embarrassment. "I heard some men talking at the general store about how there might be work up in the logging camps for the winter. They said lumberjacks needed help with cooking and cleaning and such. I thought maybe if I could get there, I could find some work and a warm place to sleep." Sam felt a surge of admiration for the boy's courage, even as he was horrified by the desperation that had driven an 11-year-old to attempt such a dangerous journey alone. 15 miles through mountain terrain in a blizzard," Sam said quietly. "You're lucky to be alive, son." "I know," Billy whispered. "I got turned around in the snow. Everything looked the same, and I couldn't feel my feet anymore. I thought I was going to die under that tree." Rex, who had been lying quietly beside the bed, seemed to sense the boy's distress and gently rested his head on the mattress near Billy's hand. Without thinking, Billy began stroking the dog's fur, and some of the tension left his small shoulders. "Well, you didn't die," Sam said firmly, "and you're not going anywhere until you're completely healed and we figure out what to do next." Billy looked up sharply. "I can work, mister. I don't expect charity. Soon as my feet are better, I can chop wood or clean or cook. I'm a good worker, honest." The boy's fierce independence reminded Sam of himself at that age. He'd been orphaned at 12 and had learned early that survival depended on being useful to others. "I'm sure you are, Billy. But right now your job is to get better. Here, can you manage some soup? As Sam helped Billy eat small spoonfuls of warm broth, the boy gradually relaxed and began sharing more of his story. He spoke of sleeping in doorways and abandoned buildings, of going days without food, of learning to avoid certain parts of town where unfriendly men gathered. He talked about his mother, who had worked as a seamstress until the fever took her, and his father, who had been a decent man until grief and whiskey destroyed him. Ma always said that kindness comes back to you, Billy said softly as he finished the soup. She used to help other folks even when we didn't have much ourselves. Said it was important to be good to people. Sam felt a lump form in his throat. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was the best, Billy agreed, then looked directly at Sam. Why did you help me, mister? Most folks just walk past when they see someone like me. Sam considered the question seriously. I guess because someone helped me once when I needed it, and because it was the right thing to do. As Billy drifted back to sleep, Sam sat by the fire and thought about the boy's question. The truth was he'd acted on instinct, the same way he'd react to any creature in distress. But Billy's presence in his cabin was already changing something in Sam's ordered, solitary life. For the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel empty. The sound of another person breathing, of Rex contentedly settled beside someone who needed protection, filled spaces in Sam's heart he hadn't realized were hollow. Outside, and the wind continued to howl through the pine trees, and snow kept falling steadily. But inside the warm cabin, a lonely man and an orphaned boy had found each other, and both of their lives were about to change in ways neither could imagine. Sam had no idea that word of his kindness was already spreading through the mountain communities, carried by the logger he'd sent word to about missing work. He couldn't have known that people throughout the region were learning about the lumberjack who had saved a freezing child, and that many of them were planning to respond in their own way. Chapter 3. Word spreads like wildfire. The next morning dawned clear and bitterly cold, with fresh snow sparkling like diamonds in the early sunlight. Billy's condition had improved dramatically overnight. His color was much better, and though his feet were still tender, the frostbite appeared to be healing without permanent damage. Sam was preparing breakfast when he heard the distant sound of sleigh bells approaching through the forest. Rex barked once, alerting them to visitors, then settled back down, apparently recognizing friendly voices. And that'll be Doc Harrison, Sam told Billy, who had propped himself up in bed to listen. I sent word yesterday that I had someone who needed medical attention. What Sam didn't expect was for Doc Harrison to arrive with 3 other people: Martha Henderson from the general store, Pastor Williams from the Timber Creek Church, and surprisingly, Mayor Thompson himself. Sam, Doc Harrison called as he knocked on the cabin door. How's the boy doing? Sam opened the door to find 4 concerned faces looking back at him. He's much better, Doc. Come in, but keep it quiet. He's still recovering. As the visitors filed into the cabin, Sam noticed they were all carrying packages and bundles. Martha Henderson was struggling with what appeared to be a large basket covered with a blanket. Word got around town pretty quick about what you did, Pastor Williams explained quietly, as Doc Harrison approached Billy's bed. When folks heard about the orphan boy you saved from freezing, well, people wanted to help. Billy looked overwhelmed as the gentle doctor examined his feet and checked his overall condition. The boy clearly wasn't used to being the center of so much attention, especially positive attention. Our feet look good, Doc Harrison announced after his examination. No permanent damage from the frostbite. You'll be tender for a few more days, but you should heal up just fine. You're a lucky young man. It wasn't luck, Billy said softly, glancing at Sam. It was Mr. Carter saving my life. Martha Henderson stepped forward with her basket. Billy, honey, the ladies in town heard about your situation, and we've been gathering some things we thought you might need. She pulled back the blanket to reveal the basket packed with warm clothes, mittens, a heavy coat, and thick wool socks. These are all good quality items that our own children have outgrown. We thought they might fit you. Billy's eyes went wide with amazement. All this is for me. Mayor Thompson, a portly man with kind eyes, cleared his throat. Son, what happened to you could have happened to any child. A community takes care of its own, and as far as Timber Creek is concerned, you're one of ours now. Pastor Williams nodded in agreement. We've been discussing your situation, Billy. There are several families in town who would be honored to provide you with a home. Good people who would treat you like family. Sam felt an unexpected pang at the pastor's words. In just 2 days, he'd grown attached to having Billy around. The boy's quiet presence and eager helpfulness had filled a loneliness Sam hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. That's real kind of everyone, Billy said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never expected anything like this." Doc Harrison smiled warmly. "And sometimes the worst situations bring out the best in people, son. Your misfortune has reminded all of us what's really important." As the visitors prepared to leave, Martha Henderson pulled Sam aside. "Sam, what you did has touched a lot of hearts in town. People are talking about it. And the story is spreading to other communities too. It wasn't anything special, Martha. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't," she said firmly. "You did. And that matters." After the visitors left, Sam and Billy spent a quiet day together. Billy insisted on helping with simple tasks around the cabin, despite Sam's protests that he should rest. The boy seemed determined to prove his usefulness, a trait Sam recognized from his own difficult childhood. "Mr. Carter," Billy said as they sat by the fire that evening, "those folks in town seem real nice, but would it be okay if I stayed here with you for a while longer, just until I'm completely better?" Sam felt his heart warm at the request. "Billy, you're welcome to stay as long as you want, but those families in town could give you things I can't. Other children to play with, proper schooling, a woman's care." Billy considered this seriously. "That all sounds nice, but you saved my life and I feel safe here, and Rex likes me." The dog, as if understanding he'd been mentioned, lifted his head and thumped his tail. "Well," Sam said, "there's no hurry to decide anything. You focus on getting better, and we'll figure out the rest as we go." That night, as Billy slept peacefully and Rex kept watch from his spot on the floor, Sam found himself thinking about the unexpected turn his life had taken. For 20 years, he'd lived a simple, predictable existence. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Now suddenly he was responsible for another human being, and the weight of that responsibility felt both terrifying and wonderful. What Sam didn't know was that throughout the surrounding mountains and valleys, word of his act of kindness was continuing to spread. The story was being told in mining camps and farming communities, in churches and general stores, around family dinner tables, and in logging camps. Each telling emphasized different aspects: the child's desperate situation, Sam's selfless response, the community's rallying support. But all versions of the story carried the same message. In a harsh and often unforgiving world, kindness still mattered. One man's simple decision to help a freezing child had reminded an entire region of their shared humanity. And many of those who heard the story were preparing to respond in their own way, organizing a gesture of gratitude that would humble both Sam and Billy and demonstrate the incredible power of collective compassion. The stage was being set for something extraordinary, though neither Sam nor Billy had any idea what was coming their way. Chapter 4. The Silent Miracle. Billy had been staying with Sam for 5 days when it happened. His recovery had been remarkable. The boy seemed to thrive under Sam's patient care and Rex's constant companionship. Billy was now able to walk around the cabin without pain, and his natural energy and curiosity were beginning to shine through his previous wariness. Sam had grown increasingly fond of the boy's company. Billy was intelligent and eager to learn, asking countless questions about lumber work, wood carving, and life in the wilderness. In the evenings, Sam had begun teaching him to read better using his small collection of books, and Billy absorbed every lesson with hunger for knowledge. On this particular morning, Sam woke before dawn as usual, but something felt different. Rex was standing at the window, tail wagging but not barking, making soft whining sounds that seemed more excited than alarmed. "What is it, boy?" Sam whispered, not wanting to wake Billy. Sam pulled on his boots and coat and stepped outside to check on Thunder and secure the morning wood supply. The moment he opened the door, he stopped dead in his tracks. His cabin was surrounded by blankets, not scattered randomly, but carefully arranged in neat rows and stacks that covered every surface around his home. Blankets draped over fence posts, folded precisely on tree stumps, hung from low-hanging branches, and stacked in orderly piles on his porch, his chopping block, and even on his woodpile. There were quilts and wool blankets, heavy winter covers and lighter throws, blankets in every color and pattern imaginable. The silence was profound. No footprints in the fresh snow showed how they had arrived. No voices or sounds of departure. It was as if the blankets had simply materialized during the night, placed with care and intention by invisible hands. Sam walked slowly through the extraordinary display, counting as he went. There had to be hundreds of blankets, more than any one person could possibly use in a lifetime. Each one was clean and well-maintained, clearly given with love and respect rather than as charity. "Mr. Carter," Billy's voice came from the doorway behind him. What is all this?" Sam turned to see the boy standing in the doorway, his mouth hanging open in amazement, Rex beside him with his tail wagging furiously. "I honestly don't know, Billy. I woke up and found them like this." Billy walked carefully through the snow, touching the blankets with wonder. "There's so many. Why would someone do this?" Before Sam could answer, they heard the sound of approaching horses. This time, it was a delegation from multiple communities, not just Timber Creek, but representatives from mining camps, farming settlements, and logging operations throughout the region. Pastor Williams was among them, along with Martha Henderson. But Sam recognized faces from communities he'd barely visited. There was Jake Morrison from the Silver Creek mining camp, 15 miles to the east. There was Emma Sullivan, who ran the trading post at Pine Ridge, 20 miles to the north. There were farmers, loggers, shopkeepers, and families Sam had met only in passing over the years. "Morning, Sam," Pastor Williams called out as the group approached. "We came to see if you discovered our little gift." "This was from all of you." Sam gestured at the sea of blankets surrounding his cabin. Emma Sullivan stepped forward, her weathered face glowing with satisfaction. "When word spread about what you did for young Billy here, folks wanted to do something to show their appreciation. The story traveled through every settlement within 50 miles. Jake Morrison nodded enthusiastically. "In the mining camps, men were talking about it around every cook fire. Here was a man who didn't just walk past someone in need. He took a stranger into his home and cared for him like family." "But why blankets?" Billy asked, still awed by the display. Martha Henderson smiled warmly. "Because you were cold, honey. Because you nearly froze to death. And Sam's kindness kept you warm. We wanted to make sure neither of you would ever be cold again." Pastor Williams gestured to the assembled crowd. Every family contributed at least one blanket. Some gave more. Mining crews pooled their resources to buy new ones. Farm families donated quilts their grandmothers had made. Trading posts opened their stores. "How many people were involved in this?" Sam asked, overwhelmed by the scope of the gesture. "Near as we can figure, about 300 families," Emma Sullivan replied. This word just kept spreading, and everyone wanted to be part of it. Billy looked up at Sam with tears in his eyes. 300 families all did this because you helped me." "No, son," Pastor Williams corrected gently. 300 families did this because your story reminded all of us what really matters. Sam's kindness to you inspired kindness in all of us." An elderly woman Sam didn't recognize stepped forward from the crowd. "Young man," she said to Billy, "my name is Rose Patterson. I live over in Cedar Valley with my husband and our 6 grandchildren. When I heard about what happened to you, it reminded me of my own brother, who was orphaned during the war. I made that blue quilt there especially for you, because every child deserves to know they're cared for." Similar testimonies came from throughout the crowd. A logger spoke of his own difficult childhood. A miner's wife talked about the importance of community support. A farmer explained how Sam's actions had inspired him to be more generous with his neighbors. "We arranged this early in the morning," Jake Morrison explained, "because we wanted it to be a surprise. Not a show. Real charity doesn't need an audience." Sam found himself deeply moved by the gesture and the sentiment behind it. "I don't know what to say. This is incredible." "Say you'll accept it," Martha Henderson urged, "and say you'll remember that kindness creates more kindness. Your simple act of helping Billy has created a wave of goodness that's touched every community in these mountains." Billy stepped closer to Sam, his small hand slipping into the lumberjack's larger one. "Mr. Carter, can we keep some of these blankets for people who might need them? Like if there's another person caught in a storm, or families who don't have enough to stay warm." The crowd murmured approval at Billy's suggestion, and Sam felt his heart swell with pride at the boy's generous spirit. "That's a wonderful idea, Billy. We'll keep what we need and make sure the rest goes to people who can use them." As the crowd began to disperse, many people stopped to speak with Billy, offering him work, education opportunities, and invitations to visit their communities. The boy was polite and grateful, but Sam noticed he stayed close to his side throughout the conversations. After everyone had left and they were alone with their incredible bounty of blankets, Billy looked up at Sam seriously. "Mr. Carter, I've been thinking about what Pastor Williams said about those families in town. They seem real nice, and I'm grateful for their offers. But would it be okay if I stayed here with you? I mean, if you want me to." Sam knelt down to Billy's eye level. "Billy, are you sure I can give you a home and teach you what I know? But I can't give you everything a real family could." Billy smiled, the first completely carefree smile Sam had seen from him. "You saved my life and took care of me when I had nobody. Rex likes me, and I like helping you with your work. Seems like family to me." As Sam looked at the boy's hopeful face, surrounded by hundreds of blankets given by a community inspired by kindness, he realized that his solitary life was over, but instead of feeling lost, he felt found. "Well then," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "I guess we better start figuring out how to organize all these blankets. And maybe I should teach you to read those books a little faster. You're going to need a good education if you're going to be my partner in this lumber business." Billy's whoop of joy echoed through the mountain valley, and Rex barked enthusiastically in response. 3 lives, man, boy, and dog, had been forever changed by a simple act of compassion, and the ripples of that kindness would continue to spread through the mountain communities for generations to come. Chapter 5. A Legacy of Warmth. 2 years later, the cabin that had once housed a solitary lumberjack had become the unofficial heart of mountain community assistance. Sam had built an addition to store the hundreds of blankets they still maintained, creating what locals called the Warmth Depot. Any family facing hardship, any traveler caught in bad weather, any child in need could find help at the Carter cabin. Billy, now 13 and growing tall and strong, had become Sam's full partner in both the lumber business and their charity work. The boy had proved to have a natural talent for woodworking and an even greater talent for recognizing when people needed help. His own experience of desperate need had given him an uncanny ability to spot others in similar situations. "Mr. Sam," Billy called from where he was working at the carpenter's bench Sam had built for him. "Mrs. Henderson sent word that there's a family of travelers stuck at Pine Ridge. Their wagon broke down, and they've got 3 little ones with them." Sam looked up from the ledger, where he was recording their latest lumber delivery. "How far to Pine Ridge in this weather?" "About 4 hours by sled, if we leave now," Billy replied, already reaching for his heavy coat. "I've got blankets and food supplies ready to go." Over the past 2 years, this scene had played out dozens of times. Word would come of someone in need, and Sam and Billy would load up their sled with supplies and head out to help. They'd assisted stranded travelers, families burned out of their homes, miners injured in accidents, and children separated from their parents. The Warmth Depot had become legendary throughout the mountain region. Communities had organized regular contributions to keep it stocked, and Sam's cabin had become a way station for anyone traveling through the area in difficult conditions. "You know, Billy," Sam said as they loaded their rescue supplies, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "Before you came into my life, I thought helping people was something you did when the opportunity presented itself. But watching you these past 2 years, I've learned that helping people can be a way of life." Billy secured the last of the blankets on their sled and grinned at his adoptive father. "Ma always said that kindness was like a seed. You plant it not knowing what will grow, but trusting that something good will come of it." As they set off through the snow toward Pine Ridge, Rex running alongside the sled, Sam reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. He'd gained a son, discovered a purpose beyond his work, and found himself at the center of a community network dedicated to mutual aid and support. The lumber business had prospered too. Word of Sam's character had spread along with stories of his kindness, and customers actively sought out his services, knowing they were dealing with a man of integrity. Billy's skills were developing rapidly, and Sam had begun training him in the business aspects of their operation. When they reached Pine Ridge, they found the stranded family huddled in the trading post, their wagon indeed broken beyond immediate repair. The parents, John and Mary Prescott, had been traveling to establish a farm in the valley when their axles snapped in the cold. "Mr. Carter," Emma Sullivan greeted them warmly. "I knew you'd come. The Prescotts have been worried sick about staying warm tonight with the little ones." The 3 Prescott children, ages 4, 6, and 8, looked up hopefully as Sam and Billy unloaded their supplies. Within minutes, the family was wrapped in warm blankets and eating hot soup that Billy had prepared for the journey. "How can we ever repay you?" Mary Prescott asked, tears in her eyes as she watched her children finally stop shivering. "I've no need for repayment," Sam replied. "Just pass the kindness along when you get the chance." John Prescott looked puzzled. "But surely we owe you something for the supplies, the trip out here," Billy spoke up. "Mr. Prescott, 2 years ago, I was freezing to death under a tree, and Mr. Sam saved my life without asking for anything in return. A whole community gave us hundreds of blankets just because they were inspired by that kindness. We learned that helping people isn't about getting paid back. It's about making the world a little better." As they helped arrange temporary shelter for the family and assisted with wagon repairs the next day, Sam watched Billy work with the children, showing them how to stay warm and telling them stories to keep their spirits up. The boy had grown into an exceptional young man, combining practical skills with deep compassion. On their journey home, Billy was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke up. "Mr. Sam, I've been thinking about something Pastor William said last Sunday about purpose and calling. What about it? Do you think maybe what happened to me, being orphaned and nearly freezing, Maybe it happened so I could understand what it feels like to need help, so I could be better at helping other people. Sam considered the question seriously. I think terrible things happen in this world, Billy, and we can't always understand why. But I do think we have a choice about what we do with our experiences. You could have let your hardships make you bitter or selfish. Instead, you've let them make you compassionate. And you could have just warmed me up and sent me on my way, Billy pointed out. But you chose to make me family. Best decision I ever made, Sam said firmly. As they approached their cabin in the late afternoon, they could see smoke rising from the chimney and several horses tied up outside. More visitors needing help, or perhaps neighbors dropping off supplies for the warmth depot. Looks like we've got company, Billy observed. We always do these days, Sam replied with satisfaction. What they found waiting for them was a delegation from the territorial government, including a representative from the governor's office. The officials had come to formally recognize the Carter cabin as an official relief station and to discuss expanding the model to other remote areas. Mr. Carter, the lead official explained, your work here has come to the attention of the territorial administration. We'd like to provide funding and official support to help you expand your operations. Sam and Billy exchanged glances. Official recognition and funding would certainly help them help more people, but they were wary of bureaucracy interfering with their simple, direct approach to charity. What would that mean exactly? Sam asked. Basically, we'd like to establish a network of stations like yours throughout the territory, staffed by people trained in your methods. You'd serve as the model and help train others. Billy stepped forward. Sir, what we do here works because it's personal and immediate. When someone needs help, we help them. We don't want that to get lost in paperwork and procedures. The official smiled at Billy's directness. Son, that's exactly why we want to work with you. Too often, government aid gets bogged down in red tape. What you've created here is efficient, effective, and genuinely caring. We want to support that, not change it. As discussions continued into the evening, Sam realized that their small act of kindness had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. What began with rescuing one freezing child had evolved into a model for community-based assistance that could help thousands of people. That night, as Billy worked on his reading by the fireplace and Rex dozed contentedly nearby, Sam stepped outside to look at the stars. The blankets that had once covered his cabin were now distributed throughout the region, keeping hundreds of people warm. But more importantly, the spirit behind those blankets, the belief that every person deserved kindness and care, had taken root in communities across the territory. Sam thought back to that cold December morning when he'd found Billy under the pine tree. He'd acted on instinct, driven by simple human decency. He never could have imagined that one moment of compassion would grow into something so significant. Mr. Sam? Billy's voice came from the doorway. You okay out there? Sam turned to see his son silhouetted in the warm light from the cabin, Rex beside him as always. Just thinking, Billy. Just thinking about how one small act of kindness can change everything. Billy stepped outside, pulling a blanket around his shoulders, one of the original 300 that they'd kept for themselves. You know what I think? I think kindness is like those blankets. You wrap one person in warmth and they want to wrap someone else. Pretty soon, everybody's warmer. Sam smiled at the boy's wisdom. That's exactly right, son. That's exactly right. As they stood together in the crisp mountain air, looking out at the lights twinkling in distant cabins throughout the valley, Sam felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He'd started as a lonely lumberjack, living a simple, isolated life. Now he was a father, a community leader, and a symbol of hope for people throughout the region. But most importantly, he was part of a family, not just with Billy and Rex, but with an entire network of people committed to caring for one another. Come on, Sam said, putting his arm around Billy's shoulders. Let's go inside where it's warm. Tomorrow we'll start planning how to help even more people. And maybe I can finish that book you gave me, Billy added, the one about building better houses. I've got some ideas about how we could improve the shelter designs for families in emergencies. Sam laughed, amazed as always by Billy's eagerness to learn and help. I'm sure you do, son. I'm sure you do. As they walked back into their warm, welcoming cabin, Rex trotting beside them, Sam reflected on the miraculous chain of events that had brought them to this moment. One act of kindness had saved a boy's life, inspired a community, created a family, and established a legacy of compassion that would last for generations. The 300 blankets were long gone, distributed to those who needed them most, but the warmth they represented, the warmth of human kindness and community care, continued to spread throughout the mountain territory, one person at a time, one act of compassion at a time. And in a small cabin in the Idaho mountains, a former orphan and a former hermit continued their work of proving that in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, love and kindness would always find a way to prevail. Years later, when Billy had grown up and established his own family, when the Warmth Depot had become a permanent institution, and when the territorial government had indeed created a network of relief stations throughout the region, people would still tell the story of the lumberjack who helped a cold orphan and woke up to find 300 blankets covering his cabin in silence. But those who knew Sam and Billy personally understood that the real miracle wasn't the blankets themselves, it was the proof that one person's willingness to help another could inspire an entire community to embrace their better angels and create a world where no one had to face hardship alone.